Right. Hi there. I'm Patrick Mann. It's a pleasure to welcome you all to this celebration and call to action around the exhibition Stop Extinction, Restore the Earth. I'm one of the co-curators with Jeff Thomas of the project Guardianship and State, and it's been our honor and privilege to collaborate with the Embassy Cultural House to pull together what we think is an amazing exhibition. We have a great program for this afternoon, and to begin, I'm going to ask Jamili Hassan if she'll introduce Dan and Mary Lou Smoke. So I'll turn it over to Jamili.
Thank you, Patrick. It's such a pleasure to have today together with all of you. It's a beautiful spring day out there with the birds singing, so that was a great intro with the composition of the music there. Dan and Mary Lou Smoke, welcome to yet again one of our ECH programs. We're so fortunate to have you in our community. Dan and Mary Lou Smoke have been stalwart solidarity activists, advocates on so many issues, including, of course, Indigenous issues, land rights, sovereignty issues, environmental issues, and so many other concerns that have been a focus of their life for decades here, based here in London, Ontario, where they founded the Smoke Signals Aboriginal radio program since 1990. And they have accumulated an amazing and massive archive of material from their interviews with prominent Indigenous scholars, artists, activists all across the Americas, all across Turtle Island. Welcome, Dan and Mary Lou Smoke. And I'm going to turn to you for greetings and welcoming and your kind words.
Miigwech, Jamili, and Ron, and Patrick. I love the opening, starting off with the bird singing and showing all the trees in the water reminds me of when we go fasting. But I was taught that when we're speaking publicly, that we always introduce ourselves by saying our spirit name, we say our clan, and we say where we come from. And so that gives people an idea of where our teachings come from, like what area of Turtle Island. So where I come from, when we greet one another, we say Bonjour. So Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Aslanyenaskwe and Dejnakas, Makwa Dodam, Bachuana Bay Dunjaba. My spirit name is Shooting Star Woman. I'm Bear Clan, and I originally come from Bachuana Bay, which is on beautiful Lake Superior. And I'm very honored to be here to share some of the teachings that I've learned throughout my lifetime. And most of that time, I've been walking beside Dan. This summer, we're going to celebrate 44 years of being married, but we lived together for 5 years before that because that's what the hippies did way back then. And we went to a lot of ceremonies, traveled far and wide to sit with the elders so we could learn the teachings. When I was growing up in Bachuana Bay, we went to a lot of things that happened at the church, like rummage sales and bazaars and bingos. Sometimes we even went to church, but most of the time it was a social thing. And I remember when I was 8 years old, I said to my mom, well, I wonder what the Indian people did a couple hundred years ago. And my mom said, oh, Mary Lou, because I was always asking her the exasperating questions. And she said, one day you'll find out. And my mom always told me to go and sit with the elders and ask them questions. And so that's what I've been doing my whole life. And now we're in the thunder stage of our lives. And so now it's our turn to share. So I'm going to let Dan introduce himself.
Miigwech, Mary Lou. Asa Nanas Indishnakas, Kildare, Dodam, Six Nations, Grand River, Dinjaba. My spirit name is Asa Nanas. I'm a member of the Onondaga, the people of the hills, Seneca people. And I am a member of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. I come from Six Nations Grand River Territory, and I'm a proud member of the Kildare clan. So I too am honored to be here and to be part of this collaboration. I think it's great to see us all come together in this way to share and to I really like that opening as well. I really love hearing the birds. It reminds me of how the birds, each one of them has their own unique song, and they sing that song because that's what they do. And then when they put it all together, wow, what a beautiful sound to hear that. It's just like a symphony. Anyways, and it's so natural. I used to listen to that during my fasting time, like you said, Mary Lou, and I used to just love that to be woken up. And that time we were told that we were able to sleep. I mean, we had to stay awake until we heard the first bird song, and the first bird song was always the meadowlark, and the meadowlark started singing about between 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning. So as soon as that song came, then we could go to sleep. But we had to stay awake till then because that's when the visitations took place. Anyways, Mary Lou, what song are we going to sing?
Okay, we're going to sing a song called the Spirit Bear Song. I first heard this song when I was 44 years old, when we went down to Red Lake in Minnesota for a fasting ceremony. And I found out that at that fasting camp, they put you up in the trees in a birch bark, what do you call it?
Platform.
Like a platform up in the trees. So you're way up there. And so when I was in the sweat lodge with the other women before we were going out there, that's when I found out about that platform. And then I found out that it was because of the bears. Now I was shocked when I heard that, because up in Batchewana, when I was a little girl, bears constantly were roaming and would come to our house. My mom used to work in the Sioux, which is 43 miles away from Batchewana. So my aunties would babysit, and my aunties a couple times shot the bears, and so the bear would be lying on the ground. And I was really brave when the bear was dead on the ground, but I didn't want to encounter any bears like that on my fast. So the lady who was running the sweat lodge, her name was Bev Lucier. Her husband Adam was our teacher. She's the one who told me I had to take that negative image I had of bears and turning it into something positive. So I thought about how our people were hundreds of years ago when we had ceremonies. The Bear Clan people were like the sentries, and they would stay in the bush and just keep an eye out so that other nations wouldn't sneak up upon our people and attack them while we were in ceremony. So I did change my attitude about the bears, but I still, to this day, when I go out into the bush, I learned this little secret on that trip to Minnesota. When I am out there, I have a little piece of birch bark that's like 2 by 2. That's all you need. If you suspect that there's bear around, just light that birch bark up and hold it in the direction where you think the bear might be, and the bear will smell that and go in the opposite direction because he thinks there's a fire there. So that's something that we learned on that trip. So this is called the Spirit Bear Song. which miss your mess. Better to me qua, me which look a mess. Matakiwasan.
Oh, Chimigwech, Mary Lou.
I just said Matakiwasan, and that means all my relations in the Lakota language. I discovered throughout my lifetime that I'm not just Ojibwe, Anishinaabe. I always thought I was Anishinaabe and a little French because my grandfather would say he was a Frenchman, even though he looked native. So I found out that my grandfather had Mi'kmaq blood, and he came from Nova Scotia, and he came up north to Sudbury area and met my grandmother, who was a full-blooded Anishinaabe. So they had my mom, and my father was half Ojibwe and half Lakota. At the turn of the century, their people were known as the half-breeds up there in Sault Ste. Marie. So I figured out my lineage is 5 parts Ojibwe, 1 part Lakota, 1 part Mi'kmaq, 1 part French. So we always go to ceremonies. We try to get to the 8 major ceremonies of the Longhouse. We go to Anishinaabe, Medewan ceremonies. We've gone out east and did ceremonies with the Mi'kmaq people. We have danced the sun dances. And to honor my French side, well, sometimes I have some French fries. So I always make sure that I honor all my nations.
Oh, Chimigwech, Mary Lou. I'd just like to acknowledge that I remember 30 years ago when we were on talking banter on Smoke Signals Radio, I used to say to Mary Lou, I says, I bet most of our listeners right now here in the city of London, because we only had 50 watts of power, so our reach was only the city of London at that time. And I said, I bet you most of the people here in London don't even know the land upon who were sitting, who originally settled here, who the original indigenous people were that lived here. And she was saying, yeah, I bet you they do not know. Anyways, 10 years later, it was the same. People still didn't know. And then it wasn't until the TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, came out and they were talking about these land acknowledgements. And but I think what they meant was that the land acknowledgements should be done by the non-Indigenous people, because we Indigenous people, we already know, we're doing ceremony. Every ceremony we do, we always thank the original people that lived in these territories, because they were the ones who did the ceremonies for us, for our generations. And so now we do the ceremonies for the future generations that are going to be living here. And I'm talking about all generations, non-Native and Native people. So just wanted to acknowledge the original people that originally lived here were the Adewandran people, who were largely Haudenosaunee in background, but because they lived in palisaded villages very similar to the Haudenosaunee, they were agricultural people. But the Adewandran people lived all throughout this area. Then we had the Huron-Wyandot people, and then we had the summer indigenous people from I would say northeastern United States, the Haudenosaunee people. They used to come up here because this was very fertile lands here in the Great Lakes watershed. And they shared this with the Anishinaabe, the Algonquian language family members, the Anishinaabe, the Odawa, the Potawatomi, because we all coexisted, and we had the treaty known as the dish with one spoon. And at that time, when we first struck that treaty, it was because there was so much beaver here, enough beaver for everybody. And so no one ever went hungry. So that treaty, that dish with one spoon, talks about eating from the same dish, eating the beaver, and then eating from the same spoon, meaning we made sure that everyone got to eat and no one went hungry. And then, so we shared that until we started to let other nations become part of that treaty, and we let in both the Americans and the Canadians. And when we did that, all of a sudden the fur trade happened, and next thing we know, the beaver population became extinct practically by 1630. And so we had to. I mean, that's when and at that time we became very colonized, because the Haudenosaunee people sided with the British, and the Anishinaabe Algonquin people sided with the French. So it was a division between what was once a strong brotherhood, sisterhood between us from the dish with one spoon, and now we're reclaiming that dish with one spoon treaty, because we don't want to be divided anymore. We are all family. We are all relatives. We are here for the same reason, and that's to take care of each other. And so that's what I think that's what I like about this gathering that we're having, that we are coming together in this good way. And so I just want to very briefly acknowledge the earth, this beautiful Wanisleo, this beautiful day that we've been blessed with to use in such a good way. I want to acknowledge the water that is the lifeblood of Mother Earth. Nothing would survive without the water. I want to acknowledge the earth, that other feminine sacred element of life, that nothing would survive without her, and everything that she takes care of, the crawlers, the four-leggeds, the two-leggeds, the plants, the medicines, the rocks, the minerals. I want to acknowledge the trees, the birds, all the flyers. I want to acknowledge the air, Father Sky. I want to acknowledge the fire, our eldest brother, the sun. These four elements, air, earth, water, and fire, really make up creation as we know it. And the chemical elements of oxygen, hydrogen, carbon, and nitrogen. This is what all life is made of. It's made of of this, and we want to acknowledge that we are all we are all related, because we come from the earth. We come from the clay of the earth, according to our creation stories. I want to acknowledge Grandmother Moon. We're now in the pink moon. When the pink moss is growing, is coming out. I want to acknowledge the relatives, the stars, for they remind us when it's time for us to conduct our ceremonies of Thanksgiving. So we are doing our seed ceremonies, our planting ceremonies. We want to acknowledge that they are happening in our longhouses and our roundhouses, in our lodges, and that is a very important ceremony, because that we have to take care of the harvest. I also want to acknowledge the thunderers, the thunder beings, because they are the ones who woke us up back in February. They woke us up. They let us know that the next cycle of creation is about to begin. And that happened when the maple sap began to run, the first medicine that comes from Mother Earth, that's sweet water. The Natik Wata, we call them, sweet water. So I also want to acknowledge the four protectors. They are the celestial beings who look after all spiritual matters. They help us with our intuitive side, with our belief, with our faith. They help us to nurture that, and so that we can live and coexist in a good way. And our spirit helpers help us make those good decisions in life. Also want to acknowledge the creator of all life, Sagwayon Diesel, Ishaminedo, the creator of the maker of our bodies. Just want to acknowledge that everything has been put here for a reason, and we are put here for a reason, so that we don't have to travel anywhere outside of this planet, outside of this continent of Turtle Island. Everything we need is right here. And all we have to do, if we want it to come back year after year after year, all we have to do is give thanks. And we do that with our ceremonial Thanksgiving protocols. So we just wanted to acknowledge that today we just wanted to open up with that Thanksgiving address, so that in the spirit of our ancestors, all my relations, Daneto, hi. Thank you. Chimigwach, Yahweh.
Oh, Matakwasa.
Aho.
Miigwech, Dan and Mary Lou Smoke, for your inspiring words. You have truly brought our minds together.
Oh.
Yes, thank you so much, Dan and Mary Lou. I see the way that your teachings always bring people together. And also, thank you for helping us to acknowledge the traditional stewards of this region. I want to say, too, that I have had such great experiences over the years with your teachings with students, and I feel that having you here today is a great honor for the project that we're all working on together. So we're going to move on and hear a little bit more about the project. And I want to say that it's a thrill to have a panel of 27 of the 50 artists who are involved in the project joining us, so you can see us on screen. And then I think there's about another 30 or more people out there. Maybe my math is wrong, but we welcome all of you. And so the way we're going to start today is Jamili Hassan and Jeff Thomas and I are going to talk a little bit about how this project came together, this Stop Extinction, Restore the Earth exhibition came together. So I'm going to turn it over to Jamili, who is one of the founders or the originators of the Embassy Cultural House and this current iteration of it online. So Jamili can talk to us a little bit about the way that Embassy Cultural House and Guardianship and State came together. So I'll turn it over to you, Jamili.
Thank you, Patrick. First of all, I want to say what an honor it is to be together with all of you today. I'm a bit emotional. I'm not sure. It's just so amazing. So I might not make it through the whole afternoon without crying. So I'm sorry for tearing up here a little bit, but these are emotional times. So getting together in this way as a community is a really powerful way for us to be creative and to share and to give solidarity to each other. And with the good spirit and the goodwill that we can all bring. And I think that that's what we've been able to do with the Embassy Cultural House, with tremendous energy, skill, and determination from so many people who have contributed as a collective project, and with the original spirit of the earlier days of the 1983 when it was first founded up until 1990. And in the midst of this pandemic, our son Tarek decided that one of the things that we could do was to reach out to each other through this technology. And with a lot of foresight, he said, get used to the Zoom, get used to getting together this way. So almost literally a year ago, we began to have daily Zoom meetings. And from that originated the idea of digging into the archives of the Embassy Culture House. And then from there, hosting exhibitions and looking at different issues from different perspectives with a very open, inclusive, intergenerational, interdisciplinary approach. And so the grounded in the archive, grounded in what is best for cultural practitioners, cultural workers at this time. What could we do as a collective? And so that's where this all came about. And many of you have been part of this right from the beginning of this journey. Some of you have been part of it from the early days and have given your wisdom and strength to the Embassy Culture House. And at one point, Tarek said, I think we should look at different thematics and move through issues around that are important to us, that have been part of the history of the Embassy Culture House, where we did address human rights issues, where we dealt with programs that addressed racism in our communities, equity issues around in terms of for women and gender issues. So the whole gamut of what we're dealing with today was actually present in the ECH's archive. And so one of the ideas that Tarek came up with recently, and I have to give a tremendous amount of that we owe so much to Tarek, in that he has manifested a great deal of motivation, coming up with different ideas, and this one here, the Earth Day. So since Ron and I have been in dialogue with Jeff and Patrick for so many decades, much the way that we have been with so many of you, and including Dan and Mary Smoke, and of course family support and all of that is a big part of it. So we're not shy of recognizing that kind of engagement that that having those supports are part of what makes this really, really special, really unique, and really many of you enjoy the kind of spirit that comes from the youth of our community and their creativity. But actually, to have young people want to work on this collective at this time is so inspiring for us. So I reached out to Patrick and Jeff and Ron about how we could partner. And given the fact that so many of us have been working on this issue and are actually creating work at this time for the Guardianship in State project, that this would be a way to give solidarity to that project and at the same time to share the resources that we have. And I think that's one of the things that we really recognize is that in this period, the competitive aspect within the art world has been shown to be so problematic that what we really need is this kind of sharing and ongoing, non-competitive, actually wanting to share and wanting to be in partnership and recognizing how empowering that is, because we each have something very different that we bring to this project or any collective project. So I think that one of the things that I take away from this experience of working with so many of you is your generosity and how, there's just, maybe Ron wants to say something right now. I mean, so the generosity, like that is like so central, and just you have such an incredible creativity in your life every day that you brought it to us in this way. So I'll pass it back to Patrick and Jeff, and with a great deal of gratitude that you saw the enormous potential of working together. And I think it's a model for many, many projects that we definitely will use going forward.
Wow, thanks, Jamili. Jeff, I'll turn it over to you. I think we were going to look at the works that we have in the exhibition, but we can do that just at the end of once we've each spoken. So Jeff, if you want to say a few words.
I'll try to say a few words. I was thinking about what I wanted to say today in regards to guardianship in states. And I realized that it's been a long story for me, a long journey to get to this place. I am Onondaga Mohawk from 6 Nations of the Grand River, Turtle Clan. My name is Ha'atsta, and I was born and raised in Buffalo, New York. My teacher, my elder, when I was growing up was Miss Emily General, and she instilled me with what she knew as growing up in the traditions of our culture. This would eventually lead me on my own journey to find my balance, my center. And I moved to Winnipeg, Manitoba in the mid-1980s. And I was trying to find a direction for what I was doing as an artist. And as Jamili was talking, it resonated with me as well, because I find that the art world is a place that I'm not necessarily comfortable with. And I never told my elders or my family, I never called myself an artist. I said that I'm a communicator and I want to tell stories. And so when I was living in Winnipeg, I went there because of the confluence of the Red and the Assiniboine rivers, where the two rivers meet. And I made an offering to the Red River, and over the period of the next 3 years, I began to work and come to an understanding of what my place in this world is. When I returned to Ontario in 1991 to be closer to my son, I brought with me what I had learned, and I started to put it into action. The first place was Ottawa, another confluence of 3 rivers. And then when I had the invitation from Patrick to take part in this project in Garden State, I was a little hesitant at first because it was out of the zone that I was used to working in. But I realized that this museum, London, was also at the confluence and it was the place where I was supposed to be. I also began to understand what it was that I learned when I was in Winnipeg as well. And not only about finding a balance in my own life, but finding a sense of harmony and respect with the people that I come into contact with. And how divisive the art world can be, I wanted to be able to communicate and do something that was different. And I'll talk a bit about the experience of working with Patrick and the partnership that we have as co-curators for this exhibition, because it's been a great learning experience for me. And despite the fact of the pandemic that's going on, we've been able to have the most interesting conversations that I've ever had in my life with other artists from different cultural backgrounds, ethnicities, which was important. And a part of the dream and the vision that I had was to be able to bring people together. And so this was an opportunity where Patrick had laid the framework for this. And then when I came into the exhibition, this is what I began to realize, is that it was about talking, it was about the conversation, it was about finding a sense of respect and balance with each other. How do we go about doing that? And it proved to be very easy. How do we take that now and how do we carry that forward? And this is the exciting part of partnerships that are taking place, that we are becoming allies in a movement that's beginning to emerge, because it's just not the extinction as we tend to think about it in terms of the plants, the animals, the waters, but ourselves. And how are we going to save ourselves? This is what I want to be able to bring through my work and through the friendships with Patrick and Jamili and Ron, who I've known for many years. I found that this was the place to begin doing that. So that's what I wanted to say today, just to give a bit of personal background in terms of what it is that we're doing, because I find that this is really about all of these different personalities coming together and how do we come into one circle. And we've been doing that. That's exciting. And it's exciting to think about Earth Day, to think about the earth in terms of our relationship to it, what we're going to do, and where Guardianship and State is going to take us as well. So there are a lot of things to look forward to in the coming year. And that's all that I have to say, Donnie. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jeff. I feel humbled to be alongside Jamili and Jeff here, welcoming you to this amazing event, and to hear Jeff talk a little bit about the sort of evolution of this project is so heartening. I would say that I met Jeff a long time ago on an Ontario Arts Council jury, probably not long after I got to Ontario. And even at that point, I recognized that he's a teacher. And, at that point, and this is probably 20 years ago, but, I heard about, the wampum and Jeff's real powerful kind of consciousness of, as an Indigenous man of his people, both historically and in the present, on traditional lands and in urban traditional lands. And so certainly it has always been a learning experience for me to work with Jeff. So when he said yes to this idea of guardianship and state, I couldn't have predicted that it would be such a rich conversation, not only between the two of us, but, you could say thanks to the pandemic, on Zoom with this amazing group of 20 artists and thinkers, scholars. And so we have a tremendous, it's a kind of community. And, sometimes we talk about the art community, but I don't think that you can assume that when artists get together, it will be a community. But certainly my experience with this project has been that we have really come together around shared ideas and a shared sense of wanting to participate in the future in a generative way. I want to say with tremendous respect, in a way that's decolonized. And I don't say that lightly. And some of that is because I think that I have a lot to learn in order to understand what that really means. The opportunity to work with Embassy Cultural House is a kind of like coming home, I would say. And, you know, Ron and Jamili and so many people connected with the Embassy Cultural House have made such amazing contributions in this community in the past, and of course, in many ways over time. And then to bring it back around, as Jamili says so beautifully, in relation to the archive, in relation to work that has been ongoing, and yet to make it live in ways that create access for a different generation of people, younger people, people outside this community, I think has been really visionary. And I do thank and congratulate all who are involved with the Embassy Cultural House, and perhaps especially Tarek Gordon, Jamili, and Ron Sun, who really, I think, had a vision that has become a reality that is tremendously generous and productive. So I think I will leave it at that. I think maybe Melissa will just have a quick look at the three works that each of us has in the exhibition, and maybe Jamili and Jeff, you could each just make a comment about the work we're seeing, and then I'll do that, and then we'll move along.
Thank you, Patrick, for your kind words. Jeff, it's great over the decades, truly wonderful evolving friendships and professionally working together. There's so many overlaps. I'm really fortunate that we are able to express this together today. So thank you again. This is a piece called Solar Power, and as many of you know, I do a lot of watercolors that are based on gardens that Ron creates here in our place, which many of you have visited, so you know this place. And we put solar lamps in our garden, and over a period of time, I started to do paintings that were focused on the idea of the solar lamp. And this was a painting that I didn't actually think had worked out very well, but I couldn't bring myself to tear it up. So I put it in my drawing cupboard and kept pulling it out. And then one day, Ron came home with a couple of frames from Sarah's Framing and Art Center. And here's a plug. She's one of our partners and has supported the artists here in the city in terms of framing. She came home with a couple of frames that were mistakes for another client, and thought maybe I might be able to use them some way. So I did. I laid them out and kept looking at them and thinking about different ways of working to incorporate these unusual vertical frames, not my format typically. And then I thought, well, what about this watercolor that's an oversized watercolor that didn't work? What if I cut it up? But I didn't want to lose any portion of it. At that point, I started to feel there was more going on there than I had originally thought. So we made a third frame for the extra panel. And then the idea would be like, okay, this is affordable. There's three parts to it. Maybe somebody, has thinking about that side of our lives, selling artworks. But then I decided, no, I wanted to keep them together. And then I sent it over as an image to Patrick and Jeff, and they said they really liked this piece. And then I was thinking about Gardenship, and I was thinking about all those things. But it's not the work actually that I'm going to be showing in Gardenship. So when Tarek suggested this exhibition, I thought, oh, well, I have another opportunity to actually present it digitally within this exhibition. And so that's really where it came about. And then as you see, it's got 2005, 2006, and then 2019, which is when it got when it got cut up and framed. So it's not meant to be unframed. It's meant to be this kind of funny, weird triptych. So that's a little story about how artists sometimes have to reject their work, and then sometimes have to revisit the work and think, well, maybe it's not quite as bad as you thought it was.
Thanks, Jamili. So, Jeff?
Okay, there it is. Broken Treaties, 1613. I was This is the format that I'm using currently is based on the wampum belt, and I was interested initially in my own interest in archives, and then the wampum belt as an archive as well. And as a photographer, when I began working in the 1980, I had no prototypes, no previous work to base my work upon or to grow from that had been produced by indigenous people. So it was a wide open landscape for me. And as I had mentioned in my remarks earlier, that when I went to Winnipeg and I was looking for inspiration, this is the result of what came from that. And it's taken decades to finally get to the point where the series is finally has its format. And with this particular work, I sent it to Patrick in the beginning when we started talking about guardianship and state. And I was interested in kind of like the landscape itself in terms of the photograph of Joseph Brandt, well-known photograph. I used to see quite often when I visited my elder, because she had a book with Joseph Brandt on the cover that talked about the Haldimand Treaty or the Haldimand Land Deed, and I wanted to eventually explore that idea. The next figure from the Joseph Brandt is the figurine that I use in my work as a place marker in my landscape work. His name is Chief Red Rope, and this is at the end of the Grand River on Lake Erie. The next photograph, the black and white in the center, is I was driving through Albany, New York, and I happened to find this monument or statue, and I photographed it. And on the left-hand side is a Dutch person, and on the right-hand side, presumably, is Iroquois Haudenosaunee person. And this is, in my mind, was kind of like the basis for the two-row wampum belt in 1613, when the Europeans and the indigenous people came together and agreed to respect each other and not cross those boundaries. The last photograph on the left-hand side is from the occupation site, the demonstration site in Caledonia, and the ongoing land issue that is still going on. I made this photograph, I think it was in 2007 or 2008, but just as a way of looking at the state that we live in. After I made this photograph, I was driving to the reserve to visit my family, and I noticed that there was a black SUV that was following me with all the windows were darkened and I couldn't see who was in it. They followed me on to the reserve, and they continued to follow me around for quite a long time. And eventually they turned away, and then I drove to my family's house. But it was interesting just for me in terms of a site like this, and to be reminded of the surveillance that we're constantly under. As a part of the Red Rope series here, my son and I went on a road trip to find the head of the Grand River. And when we were driving around, we also found that when I pulled over to the side, pulled into somebody's driveway to turn around, I was immediately blocked off by a large pickup truck, and an irate white woman who was accusing me of doing something I hadn't done. And there was some kind of community watch program that was going on there. But she had a gun in the car, and it was pretty obvious that we were in a tight situation. The same thing happened when I was in Brantford and photographing the Joseph Brandt Monument, and somebody called the police on me and my son were pulled over. And once again, all those incidents just kept in mind the work that we're doing, but also too the resilience of Indigenous people and the ability to be able to continue to prosper in one way, prosper in the sense that we are still here. And when I was growing up and learning about American history, I always asked, how have our people survived this? And but we have a great resilience and a way of looking at the world. And this is what I want to communicate through my work. And with this piece, there's a representation with the purple lines of the Truro Wampum Belt, and also to the open ends in the sense that what's coming in and going out, that it's not static, and we've never been a static people. So there's a lot that's been packed into this work, and this is, it's not in the exhibition, but I will be producing a work that's based on corn that will be in the exhibition. And I think that's about it for this. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. So we'll go to my work. So this is a work from a series I did a number of years ago in 2015, and the series was entitled Nonsuch Garden. And as some of you might know, the Nonsuch was the ketch, the ship that the Hudson's Bay Company ostensibly came to Turtle Island on in 1670. And so in 1970, when the so-called 300th anniversary of the Hudson Bay Company was taking place, a replica of the Nonsuch was built. And it was built in England, and it sailed around there and in parts of Canada and the Great Lakes, etc. And then it came to the Manitoba Museum in Winnipeg. And so as a 16-year-old, I was hired as a laborer to work on the refitting of this replica ship. And I want to say that at that period, it was quite an amazing structure, certainly. And it was also the case that I really didn't have a strong sense of what it meant. And I would say that many people in Winnipeg didn't have a strong sense of what this replica ship represented. And so it was quite a long time in my life. It was a period of my life before I really could understand what I think the Nonsuch represents, and in essence what shipping had to do with colonialism. And as I came into, I think, a greater understanding of what that replica ship represented, was also a time that I was thinking a lot about the environment and thinking about, who is affected by colonialism. And so this work was made as a kind of collaboration. These are photographs that are printed on wood veneer. And the photograph below was taken by a former student of mine who is from India. His name's Gautam Guru. And when he finished at Western, he moved to Toronto, and he was doing his own kind of urban garden in order to produce some of his food, which I thought was a really interesting and important kind of, in essence, a way to kind of think about a kind of overturning of certain ideas around colonialism. But I asked Gautam if he would also take photographs of urban gardens. And so he took this photograph for me. And ultimately, I made a series of these works. And so you can see this garden behind a fence, and then you can sort of see part of the ship's sail in the upper portion. So I think of this work as almost a kind of a question that helps pose the problem or the ideas that Guardianship and State lay out that we asked artists to participate in responding to. And not in the sense that they need to illustrate anything about ships and gardens. And as you will see with the exhibition in the future, it's a very diverse set of responses to the problems of colonialism and the simultaneous problems that we face with the environment and what the future means for all of us. So I'm going to leave it at that. I think we're going to hear now from Tarek Gordon about the making of that beautiful video that you saw at the beginning. So Melissa, yeah, you might want to unshare your screen. Thank you. So Tarek, do you want to say a few words about the making of the amazing video?
Yes, absolutely. And it's a real pleasure to be here today with everybody, and great to have all of us together. I'm really pleased that this project around Earth Day has just kind of evolved in the way it has. And one of the highlights was working with my cousin's son, Tarek Amory, who's also his grandmother, Jessie Amory, is in the show. And we did the collaboration as I was putting together the montage of all the works. I sent the the video clip to my cousin, and he decided that he wanted to do a song for the work, and we reorganized it together. And he put together this collaboration with his band members, also Alex Bellegarde, Sean Allison, and it was produced by Palu in Montreal. And when he sent it back to me a couple days ago, I wasn't sure what to think about it. And then as I continued to watch it, it was just so spectacular, because it just showed every time we come together and create something, it creates a new idea and opportunity. And I had never really thought about, oh, well, let's get some music created for the work and organize it and curate it in a way that it will be presented. And it just is another layer of richness for how we're collaborating. And I think for me, my son, Kian, is in the show with Up in Smoke, and my cousin's son. So we have two grandsons working with their grandmothers on a project, which really speaks to the intergenerationality of this initiative. You know, we've got 3 generations and multiple connections, family connections and friendships that go back decades over the generations. And I think that really what speaks to the community that we have here as we kind of rekindle the Embassy Cultural House through the kind of ashes of the archives, and literally that the hotel had burnt down, and we're kind of recreating it virtually and online. It just opens up so many potential. When we started this, we had really one project, and now I think for the next month of May we have about 9 unfolding, and in many different directions, with our sleepwalking project on Hong Kong, our project with Mexico, we have some ideas working overseas, and it just keeps growing in different directions. And I find that this Earth Day project really roots us in our community in London, Ontario, and we're deepening that connection with the Old East Village and the business association there, and kind of expanding on gardens and work and art, and bringing it all together with the community. So I won't say anything more, because I know we want to hear from others, but it's just a real pleasure to be here. And I just wanted to thank my cousin for his time and consideration to put some music to this, to all of your works.
Well, Tarek, on behalf of all the artists and contributors to the project, we want to thank and congratulate you, because it is it's an amazing video. The music, the sound is very evocative, and I think it just does a fantastic job of encapsulating some of the complexity of a really beautiful project. So thank you so much. So now I think we're going to go along and hear from a few of the artists, and we probably would have time to hear from a few more who weren't necessarily planning to talk today. So I think we're going to start with Michelle Wilson and Paul Chartrand, although I'm not sure if Paul is here or not. And Melissa, I think you could go, and we'll just move to the slides right away. So Michelle, are you ready?
I'm here, yeah.
Great.
Hi. Yeah, I think unfortunately Paul had trouble accessing the panel, so hopefully he's here watching, but I'll have to speak for both of us. The piece that you're seeing came out of conversations around the Gardenship and State exhibition, though it's not part of it. Paul had been planning a memorial to land defenders, environmentalists who lost their life in, following their work. And he wanted to do something that was going to be very tactile and participatory, but he was kind of feeling around for the right material. And I had just done a wild clay processing course through the Archaeology Museum here in London. And I'd done another workshop with Marianne Stiegels in Manitoba. And we talked with Casey Adams about clay and the responsibility of firing clay using hydroelectricity when that's connected to dams that come at the expense of Indigenous communities in northern Manitoba. And it really got me thinking about the responsibility of working with clay and all that carries with you. And it becomes clear when you harvest your own clay, it really connects you to the lands and makes you more attentive to what's going on in the soil. So we decided to create this memorial using harvested clay from the Dishka and Zivi here in London and close to where Paul lives in Dunville. And we want to produce these links, each one bearing the name of a land defender who has died. And eventually they will be installed somewhere, and the audience will be invited at the end of that time to take one of the links home, because each one is seeded with indigenous seeds, and the clay is, so it's I've been thinking about reciprocity, and when we fire clay, we transform it into something that can't be returned to the earth. So here we're working with raw clay. It's a complete renewable resource, and it can be reciprocal when we use it to return seeds, to the earth. And hopefully moving forward, we would like to produce these links through community-based workshops. So yeah, if you're part of our network, which I think you are if you're here, keep your eyes open for that, because as hopefully COVID gets better and vaccines get out there, we would like to host workshops where we can invite all of you to come and form with your hands these links that remember land defenders from all over the world. I think we have to produce over 500 and mark their names in remembrance. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And actually, Paul is here online, so if he has anything to add, we may read that. I'll just see if he has. But I think maybe we'll move along, and we'll hear from Sharmise Thakar now.
Hello, everybody. And yeah, this is the work that is part of this exhibition, and I did it in 2020. And the work basically based on my experience and some history of river humanity and the tent, how it's being part of humanity. And like I was reading some article where I read like tent is like as long as the humanity, like 40,000 years ago. Uh, this mammoth skin was the first thing we used to make tent. So this particular image of river is basically, I kind of made out of my memory of river Thames or Antler River in London. And I kind of pass by almost every day, and I see the surroundings of the river throughout the year since I'm living in London. And I kind of try to portray the green part of the season or the year, just from a very optimistic note that how river is a great part of all, like more, I mean, the old civilization, and it's still part of our current life, and we kind of part of it, and we live next to each other. So this title of Soft Shelter and Tabernacles and the River kind of gives and connect these two part, that living beside the river over the time, and it's like thousands of years. Yeah, and this shelter that I kind of talk in my work represents kind of from an optimistic perspective, even though it's very, very important in current time that we are living. But here it's the history and kind of present that the tent is part of our life, and it's kind of for me it's optimistic. And so I just wanted to acknowledge both part in this work. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we have another detail.
Yes. Yeah, and yeah, and I kind of used another technique of embroidery, which is called banka, and it's very fragile. I always mention that in my work, and that I used in that green part, which I feel is kind of fragile, and we are basically acknowledging maybe in this whole project that we are talking about and part of. So yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sharmista. There's a few other people from Guardianship and State here. I think Joan Greer is here, and I may have missed somebody else, but there's certainly a lot of people involved in this exhibition that aren't part of the Guardianship and State project, and it's been really exciting to collaborate. So the next people that I'm going to ask to speak about their work are Nilu Salimi and Mohammed Tabesh, and so I'll turn it over to both of you.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, everyone, for being here today with us. It's such a pleasure and heartwarming gathering every time with Embassy Cultural House and today with Guardianship and State. Well, this piece that you're looking at, it stemmed from a very personal place for me. It was drawing a branch a day and sitting exactly where I'm sitting here, looking at a wild apple tree, excuse me, through the window. And it was last year in July, a few months into the pandemic, with its restrictions, changes, all the illnesses, uncertainties, the deaths, and everything around that. I was out of job, moved my studio into my apartment. I had this awful brain fog, like everybody else, I guess. But this very simple practice that I guess we all learned, one of the first lessons in art school or in kindergarten, to look at something and draw it. And as beautifully as Dan acknowledged everything around us at the beginning of this event, and it made us all emotional because we all need that acknowledging thing, everything, and being connected to the earth. And as simple as it was, it was very valuable and brought me back to the balanced position. And I'm very grateful for it. All I needed is to just sit down and acknowledge every leaf on the tree in July and just draw it. And it wasn't because of drawing it. I was drawing it to understand the leaf on the tree. And it brought empathy back to my conscious, empathy in sense of being connected and understanding my environment. And to connect to this work, it's a clay piece that is fired once, and I drew on it before it was fired. And Mohammed and I always talked about collaborating with each other, and he gave me some pottery pieces and tiles and different things, different situation of clay and earth. And I was holding a very irregular shaped bowl, which was beautifully done, and it fit into my hand perfectly. And I was holding it and drawing something inside the bowl. And I felt like this is it. This is a very visible connection to the material of Earth that is 3 stories down there. And like Michelle's and Paul's project, such a beautiful thing, but it was a personal moment for me to touch it. And of course that clay wasn't from down there, but I felt the connection, and I talked to Mohammed, and we wanted to come up with something that is collaboration with Mohammed caused this or created this possibility to bring this personal matter, this acknowledgement of this time, this moment, to broader cultural or even political matters that caused the initial anxiety and brain fog in me. And I would leave it to Mohammed to talk about the pattern and why he thought it was important to, or why he chose this pattern for this piece. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nilu. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I hope everybody can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Neela put everything beautifully, and I would just add to it how I came up with this idea of this Islamic pattern tiles. And if we go to the next slide, yeah. So once I started thinking about making tiles for Niloufer's painting, I started looking up tiles, and I wanted to use my heritage and the visual language of my heritage to do something about it. So to be inspired, I started looking at images, and this panel is from the Met Museum, and they labeled it panel composed with tiles in shape of 8-pointed stars and crosses 13th century. And when I looked at this panel, I had a few thoughts about it. The very first one was obviously the museum culture and ethics of acquiring. The website says that in 1941, it was donated by a gentleman to the museum with name and everything, but they never talked about how that gentleman actually received these pieces. But that on the side, the more I looked at this piece on the wall of the Met Museum, the more I felt like this is out of place. And it was not doing what it was supposed to do when the artists actually make these pieces. So it was part of an architectural piece, architecture. And now it's turned into an artifact on the wall, and it's called panel. And to make things worse, I noticed that actually the whole panel is installed upside down. So if you look closely, you can see the writings on the margins of the tiles, and those writings are actually misplaced. So to me, it was really out of place. And I really wanted to make something that belongs to now and this place. Also, the way museums show these pieces always, it feels like they're talking about things of the past. So these cultures no longer produce art, or they never produce contemporary art. So it was important for me to take this visual language and with help of Niloufer, create something that is contemporary art that belongs to this land that I'm living in right now and speaks my language. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Mohammed, and thank you, Niloufer. It's so fantastic to see the work and also to hear you speak about it so beautifully. So we really appreciate it. I'm going to turn it now to Fern Helfand.
Can we play this with the sound, please? Thanks. So I used to live in London in the 80s and 90s, and I've reconnected with the Embassy Cultural House, and thank you so much for providing these amazing opportunities. And I have to say, this last year has, part of the highlight of the whole year has been taking part in the activities that you guys have done. And another wonderful thing that happened to me is I posted this video without sound on social media, and I made another fantastic connection with a student I had at Western in the 80s, Dave McFarland. And you can't see it on this particular slide, but he created the sound, and it's an excerpt from one of his albums entitled Fieldwork. So I just want to say a little bit something about this work. It's actually not a video, it's an animation done in Adobe After Effects. It's a brand new technique for me. And it is inspired by this, it's made specifically for this exhibition, but inspired by a show which I actually just installed a couple of days ago in a small town, mill town called Grand Forks in the interior of BC. And I had to be a little bit more subtle there because the economy of that town is based on part of it on the lumber mill. So a little background, after I moved here into the interior of BC in 1998, and I got a house at the edge of town, but the bottom, we're in the hills here and it's all forest, like less than 5 minutes I'm on the trails. And I feel so much more embedded into nature here. I was never so much, I never was so much involved with the environment as I am here. It's just, you're part of it here, not like you are when you're in the middle of the city. So I also am a lot more personally impacted by nature. On one hand, it seems that humans have so much power over nature. They denude the forest hills. In this area, they take a hill, they clear it, they flatten the tops into plateaus, and they build instant suburbs. So in a way, it just feels that we have so much power over it. But then, of course, as we all know, nature takes its revenge on us, and it is the ultimate power over us with storms, floods, droughts, and what we're really afraid of out here is forest fire. And I've been evacuated from my house, and we've had huge fires out here. So I'm much more aware of the fragility of the planet over I've become more and more aware over the last 20 years. So a lot of my work has been about the environment and about the logging industry, which is very much here. And in the exhibition that I have right now, I have to be a little bit more subtle. So this piece is obviously starts with light and fluffy clouds and goes into storm clouds that eventually kind of diminish to nothing. The exhibition that I have in Grand Forks, one entire wall is a horizon line with sky going from fluffy clouds to storms to day to night, but it's a little bit more subtle. And I have the people from the mill supplied some stuff for the exhibition actually. And I'm hoping that people come in and see the work and really think really a lot more about the environment, although they've had incredible floods there, so they are very aware of the environment. It's a great, this forestry industry is a huge contradiction and double-edged sword. And that's what I'll say for now.
Thank you so much, Fern. And when we started, I said this is an exhibition celebration and also call to action. And I think you really have articulated around your work so substantially that reminds us what a call to action art can be. I think the next one is just Jenna Rose Sands, who unfortunately was unable to join us. She was going to speak about her work and then at the last minute was unable to join us. So I don't want to speak for her, but I really do want to honor this incredibly beautiful work. And it's certainly a great contribution to the exhibition. So we thank Jenna Rose, and hopefully we'll be able to hear about her work at another time with ECH. And then I think the last one in the deck of slides is Carol Conde and Carl Beveridge. And Carol and Carl are here. So if you want to pipe up, we'd love to hear from you.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have a bit of laryngitis, so my voice is a bit off. So first of all, I want to thank everyone for inviting us to be part of this. We're from Toronto, we're artists. And it's really great to be linked up with people in London and to feel a part of that community. And we really appreciate that. I should point out that there's no project like this going on in Toronto, which says something, I guess, I don't know. Anyway, getting to this piece, it's basically, the image is based on 14th and 15th century altar paintings that were often called the Day of Judgment. And usually the center image would depict the kind of current state of affairs in the world. And then on either side were heaven and hell. And of course, the big dilemma at that time was not the environment, but was whether you lived a good life and whether you would go to heaven or go to hell. I think in our world today, it's not so much that, it's that whether we will survive or whether we will self-destruct. And in a sense, self-destruction is our hell, and a possibility of a sustainable future is our possible heaven. So that's kind of the basis of the image. The other thing I want to mention is that with most of our work, we try to reference the issue to capitalism, because I think underneath the environmental issue is the issue of capitalist extraction and exploitation. It is the whole drive of capital for growth, for maximizing everything they can, that has brought us to the edge that we are now. And I think the only way that we're going to change and hopefully achieve a sustainable future is we have to basically get rid of capitalism. I just thought I'd throw that in there. Go ahead.
Oh, I don't know. In the center one, obviously, the capitalist is zipping up his pants, and Mother Nature is has been raped under the tree, and the capitalist is filling his boxes with the apples that he'd gotten out of the tree. And on the other side, it's the and that one is, of course, in the Walmart plazas in urban cities. And then on the other side, where the good side is, you've got the, I guess I should start with the bad side. Then the bad side is that Mother Nature is being hit by the capitalist and picking up, and things are burning, the mall is going down, money is flying about. And on the good side, it's Mother Nature up in the tree, picking the apples and handing it down to the mother and the child, and everyone is helping everyone and riding bicycles and all that sort of thing. So I don't know, Carl, you could probably speak about it a little better.
Well, in the sustainability side, capitalists are being re-educated. And I should say that what I really enjoyed about this piece was being able to burn down a Walmart.
Stop it.
And on that note, I think we've covered it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, I think it's a great argument for greed being the arch enemy of the environment and our future. So we thank you so much, and for all the work you do, which is really a call to action. I think we should probably unshare now. And I'm looking at the time, and we had said we might hear from other artists, but I think we're almost an hour and a half into this, and we also are going to be hearing a little bit about other aspects of the project. One is called Cloud to Street, and we also want to hear from Bernice Vincent and Olivia Masuto. I'm thinking maybe we should what do we want to do first, Tarek? Should we talk about Cloud to Street or talk about the Bernice Vincent project with Esther?
There we go. Here's
Okay.
The retrospective.
Great. So Esther Vincent, if you would like to share with us about this.
Hello. So my name is Esther Vincent. I'm the daughter of Bernice Vincent. Here's a photo of my mom here on the side of the screen. I am here on Zoom coming to you from Peterborough, Nogajiwanong, where I moved to go to university. And this is a show that my mom did in the early 90s, 91 at Gibson Gallery. My mom started out her career, well, the middle part of her career, I guess. When my brother and I were very young, we lived in the suburbs, and she felt very constrained by the suburban home that we were in, and her painting was really focused on her immediate surroundings, things in the kitchen, things in the backyard, kettles, pears, the view out the window. And then when my brother and I grew up and she could be more independent, she started to look outside the house and became really fascinated. She's always loved landscape, became very fascinated with the landscape, and then ultimately really intrigued by roadways as they moved through landscape. And the sort of dichotomy, contradiction of roads being these incredibly valuable things that connect us, but that they also destroy the environment. And I think not in a small part actually by her association with Ron and Jamili and Jamili's own mom. My mom was, I guess, kind of had her political consciousness awakened, emboldened, and started to want to speak more in her pieces about this contradiction that she witnessed of how much she loved driving through the landscape, looking at the trees, but that for her, in order for her to be able to do that, parts of the earth needed to be destroyed. And I think that expression ended up sort of culminating in these two pieces, which have not really been shown much. The one on the left that you see there is clear cutting. My mom sort of slowly became more and more enraged at the facility with which we in Canada in particular were just cutting everything down and leaving massive scars on the landscape. And at the same time, we're doing, also facilitating the clear cutting and burning of the rainforests. And the one piece on the right is a cutout panel that shows the road receding into the landscape. The landscape itself is part of the same panel with the flames at the top, but then the smoke is intended to be painted on the gallery wall and right across the ceiling, so that as a viewer, when you're standing in front of it, you see the smoke enveloping you. And I think that was something she really wanted to express, is that how much this destructive aspect of the way we connect each other is in fact all around us, envelops us. And that I think she was not trying to come up with answers or solutions, but merely pointing out that this is something that needs to be addressed. And going forward after this exhibition, she started to work more and more with plant matter, landscape, and the changing landscape. And she had written a note that I found a couple nights ago looking through her piece that was right about this time, saying the new works are concerned with altered landscape and with man-made structures, roads, bridges, etc. in the natural landscape, or what becomes the man-made landscape. And I think she really struggled with that position that we as humans have in being able to massively alter our landscape and often destroying it. And I think I'm really happy that this is part of this exhibition, that we've been able to come together, because I think we are at a turning point in history where we can make a choice. Do we want to continue to destroy the landscape, or do we want to learn to live within it, work with it, work under it, recognize it as fully living as much, if not more so than we are. And so thank you very much for to everybody involved for allowing me to allow my mom to express her ideas in this context. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Esther. And definitely when the show was being put together, there was a real strong sense that we needed to point to the urgency of the moment and our responsibility. And I think your mother's work is very much in line with that. So are we going to hear from Olivia now? Olivia Masudo.
Hi, Patrick. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I decided to write this piece because another friend who is an emerging writer needed lots of different pieces on the environment. And I had decided to write something about art and the environment because I felt that was the only way I could sort of successfully, I think, speak to these concepts. And part of what I decided to do was to look at 3 different artists. And I decided if I was going to do it, I was going to go big or go home. So I chose 3 artists who I thought have moved me emotionally and spiritually in the same way that I feel that the earth has done that. So I had chosen to contact Shelley Nero, Ron Benner, and Christina Battle. And Shelley Nero, I had was first introduced to her work at Western University. She gave a lecture, and I remember seeing her La Pieta #1, and I never forgot it. And I had reached out to her after I had after I had decided on, wanting to celebrate this work, along with Ron Benner's As the Crow Flies Garden at Museum London, as well as Christina Battle's work. The name's escaping me right now, but it's her seed saving project, where she shares seeds through a barter and trade system. And to my surprise, after I'd contacted all three of these artists, they had all said yes to an interview. And I had got to contact them, and they spoke to me about these works and were able to share, why it was important that they make these works and share these. And it was very inspiring as a young artist to hear about these firsthand. And I was happy to be able to share that. And I'm happy to be able to be here among so many incredible artists with such long careers. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Olivia. And Olivia is a tremendously important contributor to ECH, and I know a hugely valued member of a younger art community in London that is really picking up the mantle around art and activism. So we congratulate you on that, Olivia. And so now Tarek and Ron Benner are going to talk about the cloud to street aspect of this Earth Day project.
Great. Well, maybe I'll let Ron start, and then I'll fill in.
Ron?
You have to unmute.
Okay. Yeah, I follow the directions of Tariq. So Tariq, he said we should set some of the work up in store windows, and we're now into our third wave of this nightmare of pandemic. Stores are pretty well closed. You can pick up stuff, but anyways, Tariq said we should show work in the windows from Stop Extinction, Save the Earth, whatever, Restore the Earth. So we put it on hold when the third lockdown happened, but I was able to contact these places and go in the back doors with the work, wearing a mask, and set them up very quickly, and then retreat out the back door again. And it's been quite a enervating sort of thing to do, because now people can wander around and see the actual works. And I think we can expand this. Tark's got great ideas about expanding this around the world, where we use other stores, independent stores to show work, independent businesses. Yeah. Want to say a few words, Tark?
Yeah. So I think for me, the Cloud to Street project really evokes kind of going from the online exhibit back into the community, and particularly around recognizing our community partnerships with small businesses that support the arts. And we did this through creating a QR code where you can scan it when you walk by the art, and that will take you to the exhibition page. And this links all these small businesses together in a collective action, or I don't want to say it's activism, but it's more of a way to take the work that's being displayed online and put it in a physical location, photographic, and it becomes another evolution of our installations. And as we go forward, this project, Cloud to Street, I think will be a key component of our online exhibits. And we've kind of coined the phrase that the world's our gallery, in the sense that wherever we can physically display the work, put up a QR code and brand it with an online exhibit, it'll link us all together in a community initiative. And wherever you live, you can participate in this way. So I anticipate that as we go forward, this will evolve, and more of our community partners will join in us, and it will take on different shapes. But I find it, I think, a really nice evolution of the online exhibit, because the Embassy Cultural House towards the end in the 1990s was doing these pop-up exhibits in locations and bookstores after and that is kind of a reinvention of what was done, and gives us so much more potential in terms of how we exhibit work and dialogue with our community.
Fantastic. Tarek, do you want to scroll back to the image that has a bit of a close-up of Ron's work? And Ron, do you want to say something about your project? I think there's an image where we can see Ron's work a little better. Yeah, the top one there.
Yeah, sure. One of the great things about this project, the ECH project, is that it's sort of prodded me to do new work, and it's been a very often on sometimes depressing year, and where you sort of wonder, well, why work? But actually, Tarek and his energy has prompted me to do 2 new works out of this living archive. And so it was through Hiding in Plain Sight that I did the work with the cochineal. And then with the Stop Extinction, Restore the Earth exhibition, I was thinking back to a work I had done in 2019 at the Clarington Visual Arts Center in Bowmanville. And I was going to highlight the center of that installation, where I have all the seeds of different parts from different parts of the world intermingled with cultural deposits from Iraq and Mexico, Peru, Jordan. And but instead of I couldn't find a slide actually of the centerpiece with the cultural deposits in it. So I decided to create a new work, and in a rectangular format. And so that's been something really wonderful, that to be able to do something positive during these pretty negative times. Bleak times.
Well,
Thanks, Dart.
And I think your title, Ron, I think it remains associated with cultural deposits 10,000 years before present era. I think it's really, really telling in terms of the moment we're in, and thinking about sometimes what we forget about the long and significant history that this represents, this moment in time actually points to. So I think that we're probably getting close to needing to wrap up, but I was thinking that if people want to sort of hang out a little bit, of course, I know that would be very welcome. I guess, I don't know, Jamelia, if you want to say anything to help wrap up, or others, but I do want to thank everybody for their amazing participation in the exhibition and the project with its many parts. And it is thanks to the Embassy Cultural House team in particular that this has come together so amazingly. But I also thank Michelle Wilson in particular, who has really helped the guardianship and state side of the ledger to come together, and with a lot of energy, and get us sort of with all our materials at the ready. So I thank all of you, and certainly to all the artists. People have been really generous about stepping up, and it has been a remarkable uptake of what really came together within about 6 weeks or something like that. So it's pretty phenomenal. Anything to add, Tarek, Jamili, or any of the ECH group, or Jeff? Are we good?
I think. Go ahead, Jeff, please.
Oh no, I was just going to say that I can only echo everything that Patrick said. I have nothing more to add to that, except that it's just been a really inspiring Sunday afternoon.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Tarek. Thank you, everyone. And I want to say that Michael Farnham, with Guardianship and State Artist, is in BC right now, tree planting, doing his taking his action directly to this work. And one of the things I recall about the Embassy Culture House is that many of the people who worked at the Embassy Culture House in the kitchen were tree planters. So they would vacate to go plant trees And we have guest chefs come in to try to keep the kitchen happening.
Including me.
Including, yes, Ron, we do Mexican food. I think Tarek mentioned that we do have a whole lot of great ideas. You are all now part of the ECH contributor list. We want your ideas. We want you to bring your ideas to us. We will work with a great deal of effort to get artist fees, get contributor fees. We're working hard on that front. Because as you know, right now we are self-funding this through donations from the community. And many of you have been tremendous in supporting this initiative without us asking. So we're committed to finding partners in different ways to make this happen and to continue. And at some point, I think just like the early years of the Embassy Culture House, we were successful at finding the way forward to pay fair compensation to artists. So that principle is embedded in our philosophy and the way that we work. And we're senior artists, and we're very, very happy to be able to circulate funds into the hands of particularly young emerging artists and writers and contributors who really need that experience of receiving funds for their work, for their cultural work. And I want to salute Carol and Carl for all the years of advocacy that you've done on that front, and your son Craig doing the work for the basic income. I think this is something that many of us recognize many decades ago would have been a really important aspect for our cultural community and beyond the cultural community, obviously independent workers and of all backgrounds. Thank you, Dave Gordon. Tarek's dad in Kingston. Lisa Hermer in Guelph. Jill Price. Oh, so many of you. Christine and Paul and Victoria. Esther, guardian of your mom's beautiful, incredible work.
Carolyn Simmons in the Yukon.
Carolyn Simmons, how are you doing in the spring in the Yukon? Sandra Semchuk in Vancouver, BC. Kim Moody, the first artist to present at the Embassy Culture House with a solo exhibition. I want to say, Nilafort, thank you so much. You really excelled at putting all the contributors, adding the contributors to the list. And of course, Melissa, thank you so much for taking on the technical support here at Western. Joan and your collaborators in Edmonton, Jessie Amory, my sister. I'll end it there. There's so many of you that I know I owe a great deal of thanks to. So come back again. Let's keep doing this. Oh, Stephen Cruz. Yes, you found us through Hiding in Plain Sight from the Akimbo ad. And yeah, so it's really a great afternoon. Here in London, the sun is shining. Ron says, wrap it up.
That's why I asked you to do it, Jamili, because I knew you'd be a lot more gracious than I would be able to be. But I guess we will wrap it up now. So thank you all very much. Fantastic afternoon.
Have a great rest of the day. Mary Lou and Dan, thank you so much for your opening welcome. We will be seeing you all, hopefully, not on the screen, but sometime.
That's true.
In August, maybe September. Who knows?
Yeah. And stay tuned, more to come. We have lots of ideas. I think every time we do a project, we get 10 more ideas. And that's just the energy that's been created. I like to say that we're investing in really good memories. And I really appreciate that during this kind of bleak period that Ron's talking about, we can come away and have some really fantastic community memories together, which is really like the wealth that we take into the future is having these opportunities to be together. And I encourage everybody to read the artist statements on the website, share it. We've already had over 1,000 views on the website, and thousands and thousands of views across our social media platforms. Thanks to everybody who's been sharing and collaborating and pushing it out there to their community as well.
Bravo EC8. Okay. Thank you.
Partnership. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.